American Middle East Institute welcomes you to our 2020 Virtual Business Conference, Forge the Future, made possible through the generosity of our sponsors.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 13th annual conference of the American Middle East Institute. It's our first virtual one, and I'd like to welcome all of our friends in Pittsburgh, the United States, the Middle East, and around the world, wherever you are. I'm delighted to have with us today Mayor Bill Peduto, who has been a great friend of the American Middle East Institute. And he came to Dubai with us a couple of years ago, and that has started us on a path of many, many friendships. And Mayor Bill, let me ask you, what do you remember about Dubai, and what are some of your hopes for some of the projects and very promising things that are coming out of that visit we took to Dubai in late 2018?
The first thing that I was impressed with was the way that Dubai is growing. One of the fastest growing cities in the world. They've been able to keep a part of the history while building the model of a 21st century city. Dubai is investing in education, in medicine, and in technology. And through that investment, you're seeing new partnerships that are arising not only between Dubai and the rest of the world, but between the UAE and the rest of the world.
That's right. And all of us who live in Pittsburgh, of course, we're headquartered here, our institute. We are also proud of what Pittsburgh is doing. And you told the story very well in Dubai, and you have also told it at some of our events in the past. Tell us why you think the Emiratis, whom we met, some of them big decision makers, why do you think they're interested in Pittsburgh, and why they want to hold their grand global manufacturing industrialization summit here?
Well, the UAE is looking for partners from throughout the world, and they're looking for specialized different aspects of industries in order to partner with cities, countries around the planet. With Pittsburgh, they see a commonality in advanced manufacturing and artificial intelligence. Pittsburgh has become a leader in robotics and has long been a leader in artificial intelligence. Those different fields are coming together in a new way to look at how things are being built and how they'll be made in the future. And between Dubai and Pittsburgh, there's a very strong interest in making sure that what will become the solution is people-centered, so that we're not eliminating jobs, but creating more jobs in the automation of industry.
That's right. It's a very inspiring story how Pittsburgh has reinvented itself and is really on the cutting edge of so much amazing transformational technologies. Is there anything you would like to add about your hopes and dreams for Pittsburgh and also these kinds of global connections that you've been making?
Yeah, I would say that this is a really good example. A delegation of Pittsburghers traveling to Dubai in 2018 were able to make connections with leaders of the UAE. Through that, we will be the first American city to host one of the largest manufacturing conferences in the world, created by the people of Dubai and the UAE. This manufacturing conference will be coming to Pittsburgh, where we will have the ability on a world stage to show the transformation of a city that was built on making steel to a city that is being based on creating innovation.
We're very excited for this conference, and we're glad that you're our mayor, so open to the world at this point in our history, and we need more of these connections. And thank you very much, Mayor Bill Peduto, for being part of our conference, and thanks for all you do.
Tim, and thank you for the institute that you've created. Any initiative or any action begins with communication.
Hello everyone, I'm Pat Gallagher, Chancellor of the University of Pittsburgh. It's a pleasure to be invited to say a few words at the American Middle East Institute's Business Conference. Thank you to Simon Curtis and Bill Flanagan for making time for this short segment from the University of Pittsburgh. Your agenda today focuses on the key question for our economy and our region, which is how do we envision and help create the future in healthcare, technology, and advanced manufacturing. A key to understanding that question is connections. Knowledge is the foundation of innovation and technology, but knowledge needs to move to realize its full potential. It can move from a research laboratory to a patient's bedside, or it can move from an engineering study to the factory floor. It also moves from company to company through shared talent, collaboration, and even through supply chains or through the market. Creating the perfect conditions for the movement of knowledge is what we call innovation ecosystems. And it is a central goal in any strategy for creating economic success in knowledge-intensive areas. Now, this isn't a new idea for Pittsburgh. While we're widely recognized as the former city of steel and other heavy manufacturing sectors, Pittsburgh was also a leading center for industry-based research, with the leading laboratories from Gulf, Alcoa, and Westinghouse, and other major companies located here. Today, the knowledge areas are health, advanced manufacturing, and digital technology areas, including AI and autonomous systems. Our challenge now is to create the fertile conditions where knowledge can move and realize its full potential. So we are working to foster those ecosystems, both within the university, but also across the region. And we do that by working closely with our partners in government, industry, other institutions of higher education, and in our local communities. Now, Pitt is certainly known as a center of innovation in healthcare and biomedical research. You can trace that reputation all the way back to Jonas Salk, who developed the polio vaccine here at Pitt. And in the 1980s and beyond, Pittsburgh became known as one of the world's great centers for organ transplantation, which helped fuel a broad range of research activity into related fields like immunology. That continues to this day. Pitt is one of the top funded research institutions in the nations, with $892 million in research expenditures last year alone. Now, the federal government is our largest source of research funding, and in fact, over half of that, about $517 million, came from the National Institutes of Health. Now, you will no doubt hear more about healthcare innovation today from Steve Shapiro, our amazing clinical partner at UPMC. A good example of our efforts to connect these remarkable research and clinical capabilities is actually under construction right now on Center Avenue, a new research facility that will co-host university and UPMC researchers right alongside commercial laboratory activities. Another good example is our expanded incubator and startup activities through LifeX, which is our university-based platform for creating the right conditions to grow and create new companies in the life sciences. But I want to spend a minute on the collaborative work in the region focused on advanced manufacturing. At Pitt, we created a Center for Advanced Manufacturing in 2017, and it has rapidly expanded. It supports advanced manufacturing efforts by faculty from every department in our Swanson School of Engineering. That includes innovations in materials production and supply chain management, combined with information technology, modeling, and simulation. But we're looking beyond our campus as well. In 2019, Pitt signed on to the Neighborhood 91 partnership at Pittsburgh's airport, This is the first development we know of anywhere that will condense and connect all components of the additive manufacturing, also known as 3D printing, supply chain into one production ecosystem. The concept is based on sharing capital resources. The goal is to offer a complete end-to-end ecosystem with facilities for additive manufacturing, communal storage for the powders required for the process, recycling of critical gases like argon, helium, that are essential to the process and can account for up to half of the cost, and efficiencies in post-production testing and analysis. The airport already has a micro power grid under construction, which will use natural gas extracted on the site, guaranteeing a reliable source of energy for manufacturing and operations. And finally, the location offers access to Pittsburgh's International Airport to reach global markets efficiently. People and products can easily reach anywhere in the world within 24 to 48 hours. We anticipate a sustained positive impact on the region as innovative companies cluster alongside Pitt engineers and scientists and students and entrepreneurs, and this has the potential to feed regional innovation long into the future. These kinds of partnerships place all the right players together, from industry, from public entities, from R&D, and from higher education, to turn ideas into useful things and into opportunities that benefit society. We create an innovation cluster, or as we say in Pittsburgh, an innovation neighborhood, where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. This, after all, is what innovation is all about. It's also what Pittsburgh's legacy is all about, and what we hope to make its future all about as well. Once again, I'm sorry that I'm not able to be part of your conversations today, but I look forward to hearing about the details at a later time and to connecting with many of you in the future. So thank you, and here's to a great conference.
Hi, I'm Audrey Russo. I'm President and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and I'm thrilled to be here with you to talk about Pittsburgh and talk about innovation and talk about the different ways that people can understand not just what you can take advantage of, but what it's like to be here. One of the things about Pittsburgh that I think the world doesn't really know, and one of it is that it's a very diversified economy. So we have our footprint in fintech, we have our footprint in material science, and which includes legacy as well as current. And then we also have the emerging technologies that come out, which is obviously artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing. Those are the things that a lot of people around the world look to Carnegie Mellon as one of the leaders. And as a result, many of those companies have found, many of those technologies have found their way into companies. So that's really exciting because that is at the forefront of many of the breakthroughs that have happened today. And so Pittsburgh, when you pair that with our know-how, which is really 4 decades long of autonomous vehicles, you have a remarkable array of innovation that's just coming out of everywhere. And then at the same time, you have the amount of research that's being done in life sciences and biotech out of the University of Pittsburgh and the University of Pittsburgh Medical College, that after many, many years of long research, we're starting to see some evidence of that getting into the hands of customers. So it makes for, it makes for anyone who's thinking about Pittsburgh very, very intriguing, because it's almost as if there's different pockets of expertise and they're not in one market sector. They can really gravitate towards any market sector and can have use for that. When it comes to talent, the whole world is fighting for the same talent. They really are. And I remember years ago when we had the G20 summit here, and we had the opportunity to interview Eric Schmidt, who was then the CEO of Google. And he said, Audrey, the whole world is fighting for the talent that Google was looking for back then. And that's still the same case today. It really is. It's the same case. But the cool thing is that more and more people who actually go to school here or have an opportunity to work here start to find that living here is quite remarkable. And it's quite remarkable because of ease of access and for your ability to make impact. And so ease means it's easy to live here, meaning that there's pockets of amazing schools. There's access to almost anything that you might want for a kid that you're raising. We have remarkable institutions that are of cultural noteworthiness, from the ballet to the museums. And the access is really there. Everyone's just one or two people removed from anyone who makes a decision. And that's very unusual. The other thing that makes it very interesting here is that you have access to people who really care. One of the things that I really love about Pittsburgh and what keeps me here is the fact that there is a deep sense of caring and a deep sense of responsibility towards your entire community. We have our issues just like other cities do, but we definitely are trying to figure out ways to continually to tackle them. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, it's really a great time to be in Pittsburgh, because I think that people are questioning their whole lives. What does it mean to have a whole life today? Very often people would think, well, I'm going to move for my work. I'm going to move because that's sort of where I'm going to go, and I'm going to either uproot my family or I'm going to take an exploration of my own and go to a new city. Today, people are saying, you know what, maybe I don't want to be cramped in an apartment and have to work in a hybrid environment or work from home, but I actually want to live a blended life, a hybrid life that allows me to work and play and experience a city and experience a place. So here, I think Pittsburgh really has that. So as we start to get out of COVID and as we start to realize all the assets that we have in our region, it's easier to be a part of that and to make that, to incorporate that into your own lives. And I think that's the exciting piece that coming out of COVID. I think most people are really questioning, what does work mean to them? What does their whole life mean to them? What about family? What about roots? What about making a difference? And I think that bodes well for Pittsburgh, particularly as we see more and more companies from outside of the region invest in the region, in particular research and development.
Every day, in countless ways, strong, lightweight, inexpensive products made of plastic make our lives more convenient. Do you know how plastics are made? Plastics are produced from the hydrocarbon molecules that make up petroleum and natural gas. Modern petrochemical plants use intense heat, steam, compression, and extremely cold refrigeration to break complex hydrocarbon molecules into simpler molecules such as ethylene and propylene that are the building blocks for plastics and many other products. Very large, high-pressure gas compressors play a major role in producing these materials, and Elliott Group, based in Jeannette, Pennsylvania, USA, is the world's leading manufacturer of these highly engineered, highly reliable compressors and the steam turbines that power them. Elliott Group has supplied hundreds of compressors and steam turbines to petrochemical producers everywhere in the world, in North and South America, in Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, in Russia, China, India, and in Southeast Asia. For nearly 100 years, Elliott's compression technology has been widely used in oil and gas production, for liquefied natural gas, or LNG, in refineries, and in many other industries. Elliott compressors and turbines operate non-stop for years, many in remote and harsh environments. Elliott's field service teams and its network of repair centers keep this equipment in top condition and repair it quickly and properly if something does go wrong. Elliott Group's customers benefit from expert local services backed by an organization with global engineering and manufacturing resources. The next time you use a product made of plastic, think about how it began as oil and how those hydrocarbon molecules probably passed through a massive compressor driven by a powerful, efficient steam turbine built by Elliott Group. www.elliott-turbo.com.
For those of you who are just joining, I'd like to say welcome to you. My name is Simon Curtis, and I run the American Middle East Institute, and we seek to foster important relationships in business, education, and culture between America and the countries of the Middle East. We are so pleased today to have my longtime friend, Sylvia Manassa, who is the CEO of AmCham Egypt and the Regional Chief Executive Officer of AmCham MENA Council. So she wears a couple of very important hats, and we're delighted to have her. I'm going to have a conversation with Sylvia first, and then I will also have a conversation with Mr. Ahmed Khalil, who is the co-chair of AmCham Egypt Healthcare Committee and also a senior director of government affairs and policy for Johnson & Johnson North Africa. So he is an expert on pharma and healthcare, and we will have a conversation with Ahmed following Sylvia's remarks. So I just want to say welcome again to you, Sylvia. We're so pleased that you could be with us today. You've been a great friend of the Institute. I know you have visited us in Pittsburgh, and you also were so gracious to a group of students American students we sent to Cairo to study intensive Arabic, and you had them for the day and made them feel so welcome. And I'm just delighted to see you and look forward to hearing your remarks. I know you're an expert on the bilateral relationship between the United States and Egypt. And first, tell us about your work at AmCham Egypt.
So hello, everyone. What a pleasure to participate at this very prestigious forum. I am honored to be with you all. Thank you, Simon, for your kind invitation. You know that we at AmCham Egypt do take great pride in our long-standing partnership with the American Middle East Institute. We believe in your goals and highly appreciate your efforts in deepening the relationship between the Middle East and the United States. As you correctly mentioned, 10 years ago, actually in June 2010, thanks to you, Simon, we organized the most successful business mission, and to your marvelous city, Pittsburgh. We were literally blown away by your genuine hospitality, by your expansive greenery, by your eco-friendly transportation systems, by your educational and technological advancement, especially in AI, patient care, and telemedicine. And we eagerly look forward to our next visit to once again visit your beautiful city and share your expertise. AmCham Egypt is one of the leading affiliates of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, connecting more than 2,000 senior executives through a membership network that spans across different industries, sizes, and nationalities. Our mission at AmCham Egypt is to promote trade and investment between Egypt and the United States. We carry out this mission through advocating on behalf of the private sector in Egypt for a favorable business environment that focuses on trade liberalization and a socially responsible business environment. Our strong advocacy agenda is carried through the work of 23 sector-focused committees. It is worth mentioning that the AmCham Healthcare and Pharmaceutical Committees are two of the most active, working on promoting investments in these vital sectors and addressing any challenges, as you will hear shortly by our committee leader, Dr. Ahmed Khalil.
It's a very large organization you're talking about. And, you know, I know that there is a deep friendship between Egypt and the United States. And I thought I would ask, can you give us an update on the status of this bilateral trade and investment relationship between our countries?
Definitely. The U.S.-Egypt commercial relations have always been robust. Simon, maybe you would allow me to share with you some key figures that will best explain the relationship between our two countries. Numbers always speak. The U.S. is one of Egypt's leading trade partners with a trade volume of $8.7 billion in 2019. Egypt was the fifth largest trade partner in the Middle East and the largest in Africa in 2019. The most recent data shows that Egypt was the second largest recipient of US direct investment in Africa and the fifth in the Middle East. The US is the third largest source of foreign direct investment in Egypt. Apache Corporation, the global oil and gas company based in Houston, is the largest American investor in the country, with current investments that total over $732 million. Notably, in 2020, ExxonMobil expanded its operations with an upstream presence for the first time through 2 exploration and production agreements, while Chevron has been awarded 3 new deep water exploration blocks in the Mediterranean, also in 2020. Other American petroleum companies operated in Egypt include Halliburton and IPR Energy. Now, the stock of US capital, excluding petroleum, accounts for 15% of total foreign capital stock. These are distributed among more than 1,400 companies. 66 new companies with US capital contribution entered the Egyptian market in 2019. American firms have a very strong presence in most economic sectors in Egypt, with financial services companies holding 45% of the US non-petroleum capital stock. Your BNY Mellon, AIG, American Express, MasterCard, Visa, and MetLife are all very active. Manufacturing is the second largest. Large US investors include Heinz, 3M, Abbott, AbbVie, Bristol-Myers Squibb, Cargill, Coca-Cola, Colgate-Palmolive, Dow, General Electric, General Motors, Honeywell, Johnson & Johnson, Kellogg's, Mars, Merck, PepsiCo, Pfizer, Procter & Gamble, and Xerox, to name a few.
Fantastic.
IT companies, including IBM, Microsoft, Cisco, Dell, and recently Google, and others have continued to enjoy a healthy growth in Egypt. The sector, by the way, grew by 15% during the first sector of, fiscal year 19. It is worth noting that Egypt is one of the few major emerging markets to maintain its positive GDP growth of more than 5% despite the COVID-19 pandemic and its economic impact.
Wow, Sylvia, that's very impressive. And those are some iconic US companies that are invested in. A
lot of them from Pittsburgh, right?
Well, and more. We need to grow it even more. Absolutely.
That's why we need to work together. Thank you, Simin.
And we will. Why? It is very impressive, as I say, the countries you mentioned, the companies you mentioned. Can you give us an idea of some of the activities that AmCham does to sort of promote these kinds of U.S. investments?
Thank you for a wonderful question, Simin. AmCham is an active advocate for reform. As I mentioned before, our AmCham committees address any challenges facing U.S. companies by initiating dialogue with our policymakers and ensuring they are resolved. We are also continuously communicating and showcasing the success stories of U.S. companies on all channels as a testament to the opportunities that exist in Egypt. Now, next December, AmCham Egypt, together with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, U.S.-Egypt Business Mission, the Council, will organize a virtual business mission. This is the fifth of similar missions. The mission will seek to explore opportunities in different sectors for U.S. investors within Egypt's stable and predictable environment, including access to a more than 100 million consumer market in Egypt, in addition to duty-free access to tens of neighboring countries in Africa and Europe.
Fantastic. Very impressive, as I say, and I'm very proud of this relationship between Egypt and the United States. And thank you for what you're doing, Sylvia. Could you elaborate a little on the contributions of the U.S. businesses to Egypt's society? How are you finding their contributions?
Thank you, Simon. Again, this is a question that is very, very dear to us all at AMCHAM. Beyond the major contributions to Egypt's economy through jobs, investments, and definitely knowledge transfer, American companies are having substantial impacts in the local communities where they operate through a variety of corporate social responsibility programs and projects. For many U.S. companies, being good corporate citizen is far more than just a gratifying slogan. It is an intrinsic part of their business model and operations. Let me share with you a very valid example. At the onset of COVID-19 back in March, AMCHAM, under the umbrella of our Trade and Industry Committee, formed the Private Sector and Businessmen Alliance Against COVID-19, primarily led by U.S. companies, where more than 43 million Egyptian pounds were raised in less than 2 weeks. Funds were directed towards purchasing ventilators, upgrading ventilators, 234 ventilators that were non-operationals, and purchasing personal protective gear. This was done through our successful cooperation with UNICEF and the Unified Procurement Authority.
Fantastic. I'm so glad that our listeners can learn more about your work at your leadership at AMCHAM Egypt, and just the great partnership, bilateral partnership that exists between our countries. Thank you so much for being part of our 13th annual conference and our first virtual conference, and hope to see you in Pittsburgh soon, and hope we can bring a delegation to Egypt soon. And
thank you.
We're sending our warmest regards to you, Sylvia, dear. And now I'm going to turn to your colleague, Dr. Ahmed Khalil, who is the co-chair of AMCHAM Egypt's Healthcare Committee and is also a senior director of government affairs and policy for North Africa, or Johnson & Johnson North Africa, I should say. We're so pleased to have you here with us today, Dr. Khalil. Well, give us your take on what's going on with COVID in Egypt right now. You're a clinical pharmacist and so have a long background in pharmacology. So please, I think it's a timely question to ask about what's going on and your take on what's going on with COVID in your country.
Sure. First, let me thank you. It's my pleasure really to join this reputable forum, and through the hat of American Chamber, and I cannot miss the hat of being in the pharma industry for 30 years plus in one of the best countries that I am really having plenty of passion, which is Egypt. So let me also share with the group who are listening to us at this moment that Egypt, what we are passionate to mention always that Egypt is the cradle of civilization for Nobel Prize winners. And we are proud, as long as we are proud with the history. I'm also proud to share how is the development in the healthcare has been coming and evolving in Egypt for the last 2 years and for the coming years to come. To clarify this position, we need to mention two important factors. One, which is economical. Egypt, post-COVID, according to the forecast, or most of the economical bodies, are going to be one of 20 countries of the evolving, stable economy that's projected to be a growing economy. Second, Egypt is becoming right now a hub for energy, as my close friend Sylvia just mentioned. So being in a better economy position and energy hub, with the political stability that we've been witnessing later on, this is allowing us as the American Chamber and American companies to partner with the government in projects in healthcare. Let me share with the group as well that the healthcare at this stage, we are having 3 different bodies. the body for regulatory, and we've been witnessing with our activities as pharma companies and healthcare companies, the fast track registration for the innovative products. And this is a true belief that what we believe in J&J as our credo for our patients, which is a life system that we work in, and the patient's right to access for innovative medications in Egypt and outside Egypt. Along with the healthcare, we also are developing building capabilities with the Ministry of Health, health workers, physicians, nurses, how we are building capabilities through the hat of American companies in our country in order to upgrade the level of the skills of the health workers. And this was tested during COVID time, and I will come to it at a different moment. The last body, and I'm happy to mention this, that we also were partnering with the Egyptian Procurement Agency, not only providing them ventilators, 200 plus 220 ventilators, or the PPEs, we also are partnering with them to upgrade their level of value, what we call value-based procurement and value-based health economics, that will have a spillover positively on the way the decisions are being taken for the benefit of our patients and our community accordingly. All those activities that I'm mentioning today is a part of what we are doing as the Healthcare Committee and as partnering as private partnership with the government of Egypt. I just need also to mention very clear that we are still working with the government very closely to give them a benchmark for a better IP environment, that we are working with them very closely. We are working with the government at this stage to give them benchmark on the green submission for the healthcare registration, that I believe the government is starting right now to be better educated on the way moving forward. And if we are looking for headroom for innovative products, this will be our future project with the government as well. The government is opening their minds as partnering with American companies, and we are using the vehicle of American Chamber to facilitate this to reach up to the ultimate objective where patients comes first, where our duties and responsibilities are towards giving better lives to our Egyptian patients in this country. Also, I just need to mention one critical thing that we are moving within COVID. We came to realize that mental health is integral part of high quality life in Egypt. And right now, in the month of October, where we are having mental health awareness programs, we are kicking this off with different stakeholders, being through our company directly or through the American Chamber, in order to ensure a better quality of life for our patients and to sort out their quality life moving forward. I will stop at this stage, but again, I'm happy to mention that Sylvia mentioned that we are building capabilities. We are building capabilities for the future leaders in this country. And this is the beauty of American Chamber coupling with American companies in order to improve quality life and to have a better people life for Egyptians. I will stop at this stage if you have any questions.
Oh, thank you so much. I just have really sort of one general question, which is, can you give us an idea of some of the opportunities that exist for U.S. companies in the sectors of pharmaceuticals and healthcare in general, so we can get our U.S. companies excited to be part of what's going on in Egypt?
The regulatory, thank you for the question. The regulatory environment at this stage allows fast-track registration of the products for innovative products. This is a lucrative point for innovative companies to step in. We still are in the beginning of this stage. We have, as I mentioned, headroom for innovation projects that we'll be building shortly with the government. But the economy and the market, if the people looking for pharma market, it's growing double-digit growth. During the COVID time, economy is stronger year by year, and patient access to the products are becoming even better and better. So this might be a lucrative for our colleagues in the US to look at Egypt as that will be top 10 or top 20 economy within the coming decade. The government as well, and this is the last thing, I should not be excluding, that we are in the era of vaccines and COVID vaccine, and we never saw the government is listening so much to the updated informations on the vaccine, how vaccine will facilitate the life of Egyptians, especially when I speak about the COVID vaccine. So this is also another point that we are working very closely with the government at this stage.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. I know all of our lives have been upended by this COVID virus, and it sounds like Egypt is really on the forefront working. I know you have a very large population, and thank you so much, Dr. Khalil, for your remarks this morning, and also previously from Sylvia Manassa. We value our relationship with you, and we look forward to working on many partnerships. And thank you again for being part of our 13th annual virtual conference.
Thank you for allowing this opportunity for us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Simon Curtis, and I run the American Middle East Institute. We're a national organization headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and we work to facilitate educational, business, and cultural connections between the United States and the countries of the Middle East. Welcome to the health segment of our 13th annual conference, the first time we're doing our annual event virtually. We are so pleased to have with us Dr. Stephen Shapiro, who is the Executive Vice President of UPMC, also the Chief Medical and Scientific Officer. And I should say that UPMC is the largest health employer in the United States. So we're so pleased to have Dr. Shapiro to talk to us about what's going on with this COVID and many other things. I mean, this has certainly upended our lives these days with this virus. We also have Mr. Samir Khalil, who runs Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America in the Middle East and Africa. So he's coming to us live from Dubai. And welcome, gentlemen. And I'd also like to say that we have our longtime moderator, Mr. Bill Flanagan, who is an executive with the Allegheny Conference on Community Development here in Pittsburgh. So without further ado, gentlemen, thank you for being here, and please take it away, Bill.
Thank you, Simon, and great to be with everybody again for this special virtual conference of the American Middle East Institute. We're all living in a very new world and adjusting appropriately, and it's great to have the opportunity to bring you this information today. And this particular panel could not be any more timely, given recent events here in the United States with the hospitalization of President Donald Trump with COVID-19. And that's had everyone here in the U.S. obviously on the edge of their seats to see how his treatment would transpire and how he would make his way through it. As we get into this discussion, one thing I want to make clear is that we recorded this session while the president was in the early days at Walter Reed getting treatment for COVID-19. So we cannot speak to the totality of his treatment and obviously to the outcome, but we can talk about some of the aspects of the treatment that the president has been receiving that are really germane to research that's happening right here in Pittsburgh and in fact around the world, but especially some promising cutting edge research here in Pittsburgh. So we definitely want to talk about COVID-19, its impact here in the United States as well as in the Middle East and around the world. But we also want to talk more generally about some of the issues and opportunities related to pharmaceuticals and pharma in general in the Middle East. And hopefully Samir will get a chance to chat with you a little bit about that. But first, Dr. Shapiro, I think it makes sense to begin with you. And a lot of attention here in the US when the president was hospitalized, when he received a monoclonal antibody treatment. Can you talk a little bit about what exactly that is and why it might make sense for a patient with COVID-19?
Sure, Bill. A monoclonal antibody, basically, if one were to give a vaccine, what you're asking from the patient's immune system is to generate antibodies that are then going to attack the COVID-19, the SARS-CoV-2. By giving the antibody itself, you're bypassing that point. You're really giving the antibody that, like a lock and key, is going to lock onto the virus and eliminate it. And while it is undergoing clinical trials and hasn't been proven, at least it makes a lot of sense in that early on in the infection, you want to attack the virus. Later on, as the immune system may start to damage the lungs and other tissue, you want to suppress the inflammation. So early on, this does make sense. And I will say that we have approved convalescent plasma, which in a way is a dirtier form of this. It basically takes the serum of patients who have successfully recovered from SARS-CoV-2 and it uses their antibodies and serum. So it makes sense, although it's not yet through with clinical trials.
Yeah, and convalescent plasma has been around for a long, long time, has it not?
Absolutely. So we've been doing this for many decades. It's not new. The more specific monoclonal antibodies are, and as you mentioned, we have a specific type of monoclonal antibody that has been developed in Pittsburgh, where it's much smaller than the traditional antibody. It's more potent and can penetrate better. And that too is under the process of being produced and undergoing clinical trials, but we hope that will be out in the not too distant future as well.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that work that's underway here in Pittsburgh, because it's really exciting, and it sounds like the folks at the University of Pittsburgh and UPMC were way out in front as soon as the potential danger of COVID-19 began to become clear. It sounds like your team was already on the case to just see if you might have a solution in your vast library of antibodies.
Well, a couple of years ago, as we started our translational sciences initiative to develop companies, we were fortunate enough to recruit Dmitry Dmitriev from the NIH, who really is a world expert in developing antibodies, including those against other coronaviruses, SARS and MERS. And John Mellors, our infectious disease head, recruited him. So as soon as this occurred, he already had the experience with other coronaviruses. And so they were on it immediately, developing antibodies. They had both a traditional one and this smaller, more potent one. So that, yes, we were fortunate to have Dr. Dmitriev here, and we got on it quite quickly.
Do you expect that the Pittsburgh approach to this may become available through clinical trial and ultimately to patients in the not too distant future?
Well, we still have to produce it. They probably are half a year away to get into those clinical trials. There's some more traditional antibody that they have, like the Regeneron antibody. And while it seems like there should be competition, we can't have enough doses of this, so that I think everybody who can produce really effective antibodies will be help patients around the world.
Well, and that's really a good point. I mean, it's been amazing to watch science and medicine worldwide sharing information and cooperating, at least for the most part, to try to figure out a solution to this, because it does affect the entire world. And Samir, maybe I'll come to you with that thought. What exactly has been unfolding in the Middle East? How is COVID-19 and the pandemic playing out in your part of the world?
Thank you. The Middle East and Africa is part of the global challenges that it's facing everywhere in different countries. Luckily, in the region, there has been very good response, I would say, by many countries, where our operation is based in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates. The country, the authorities jumped in very early in the process in order to do the right precautions and standards in ensuring that people are aware of what has to be done, putting the restriction on flying, on movement, on social distancing, mandating masks. All these has been part of the living in UAE since the start of the pandemic. Of course, they are easing it more and more because people are getting more used to this norm. However, what's noticeable that they were able to do a lot of testing. I mean, the UAE is one of the countries in the world that they did major part of the population, both the locals but also the residents in testing. And what's interesting, most probably Dr. Shapiro would have a medical explanation to it, that the percentage of death in the region is very tiny compared to the number of cases. Honestly, I'm not sure what's the reason, But if you look at UAE, I mean, the number of cases has been increasing from month to month. They decline and then increased again recently. But you will see the number of deaths since the start of the pandemic is around 400 deaths, which is 400 to 500, I would say the exact number. And that's noticeable. But, I think they are making the right moves in precautions and, all the, people social distancing. You cannot walk in the street without a mask. You cannot do anything without, it's mandated, and it's big penalty if they will not do it. But also at the level of the companies, they put a lot of restrictions on employees for how you sit in the office, how you social distance, the testing and others. So they are, I would say, doing a good job in addressing the pandemic.
Yeah, so how about it, Dr. Spiro? I can think of maybe three factors there in the Middle East. One is a very young population, I think, relative certainly to the United States. Two is lots of testing, and it sounds like nearly universal mask wearing. Is that a really critical combo to just head off the disease in the first place?
Those are great points, Bill. All of them. It's the host, the older, sicker patients that are at most risk. Masks are really important. And if one were to get infected with a mask and we think it really prevents it, maybe there's a lower dose and we have a more mild course. So that also could be an explanation. Also, we're starting to get a little more comfortable treating it. As we talked about with the president, we have more tools at our disposal than we did at the beginning. And finally, there may be, nobody likes to talk about this, some attenuation of the virus. There have been some mutations that make it more contagious, but maybe less lethal, but that remains to be seen.
Fascinating. Samir, we should talk a little bit too about other factors that are unfolding in the Middle East, other issues and challenges that you all see when it comes to pharma and the world that you operate in. What other concerns do you have right now? What needs are there in the Middle East in this space?
Yeah, so it's, when you look at even the oil-producing countries, such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, the healthcare budget is really under pressure because, as you know, it is linked always, the healthcare spending is linked to oil and gas in many ways. And those has been affected because of the global economy. So there is pressure. So we are working with governments around the region in order to find ways to partner to ensure that access to innovations for both therapies, new innovation, vaccines, that it's reaching the patient everywhere. So we have created a sort of working groups. One of them is focused on access, one of them focused on COVID-19 response, to ensure that we are partnering with governments around the region. And when you look at the region, it's a mix of oil-producing countries to countries in the Levant that are more, not as rich as the countries in the Gulf, but the budget pressure is everywhere. And we are trying to find innovative ways in working in partnership with the governments around things like digital health, because everybody wants to be in this scope and this area. Oncology, for example, an area. So we are partnering, IPharma, we are partnering with the Swedish Institute of Health Economics to talk about how can we help the governments in the region to understand, I would say, the burden of cancer, as it's becoming a growing concern for governments in the region. And, innovation and innovative medicines are changing the profile of cancer from an acute to a chronic disease, from an acute to a chronic disease, transforming cancer care and increasing the proportion of cancer survivors. So we are working with the health authorities in order to find effective strategy to balance the constraints with healthcare budget and their response to their population. Those are a couple of areas that we are working on it.
I would never really have thought about the price of oil affecting the availability of healthcare in the Middle East, but as you describe it, it makes perfect sense. Is there a lot of variation from country to country in terms of the availability of cutting-edge healthcare to the whole population?
Yes, of course. And, there is, if you look at the oil-producing countries or the Gulf countries and Saudi Arabia, they provide, first-class health care because they have built the infrastructure, they have built the systems for many years in order to provide health care to their citizens. While you have some countries where their budget are more modest, there is a lot of, I would say, out-of-pocket treatments, and that put pressure when it comes to chronic diseases. That patient continuity of chronic medication is limited because of the cost to the patient. So it varies between countries, and of course, oil is very important because that's the main source of income to a lot of the countries. You look at a country like Algeria in North Africa, which is an oil and gas, producing country, and they have been doing great job. They cover most of the population with their healthcare system, like 90% or more of population. But Algeria never diversified their economy because they kept, depending on oil and gas. And, at the beginning of the pandemic, when the oil and gas prices went down, the income of the country was 90% from, it becomes a lot of burden on it. And so they start to do measures such as restriction importation of medicine. And delaying the introduction of newer innovation to their reimbursement listing in hospitals. So definitely there is a link. But countries such as United Arab Emirates, where they have diversified their economy, so it's not dependent on oil, but it's dependent on investment. I mean, Dubai is a major hub for investment for, if you look at our companies, most of our Middle East and Africa regional hubs are based in Dubai. So they were able to attract investment, in the country and diversify the economy. It's a tourist destination. It's people come here. So that is critical. And a lot of countries now in Saudi Arabia, they have since few years established the Vision 2030 in order to diversify their economy and to move into a knowledge and innovation, I would say, economy that is not affected by oil and gas, but trying to attract investment in innovation and knowledge-based economy. Hence, we are jumping on this and working with governments to ensure that they build the ecosystem, because most probably you recognize that companies are dependent, I would say, on a policy environment that reward innovation. There are a lot of enabling factors. We want to ensure that the countries are developing that ecosystem, like what happened in Pittsburgh. Why Pittsburgh is successful, because I think was able to transform itself, from steel manufacturing city into an innovation hub.
Yeah, I'd say it's really a good point, Samir. And I think about Pittsburgh, the life sciences miracle that's happened here has really taken 75 years when the community built the University of Pittsburgh, a new medical school, way back in 1948. And it really set in motion a chain of events from Jonas Salk and the Salk vaccine to the arrival of Pittsburgh as a major world transplant center. Today, the kind of work that Dr. Shapiro has been talking about. Dr. Shapiro, when Samir talks about some of the challenges in getting treatments out because of all the economic and other issues in the Middle East. It does make me wonder, given the current challenge we have with the pandemic and the need for clinical therapies as well as hopefully a vaccine, what's it going to take to make these viable treatments available to everybody in the world? It seems like a daunting challenge.
I think it requires the clinical trials to prove that they're effective. And if we take the vaccines, for instance, there's a lot of activity, but we really need to, if there's a very rare side effect, we're going to have a lot of patients tested to be comfortable that it's going to be effective and safe. But once we do, again, there can't be too many of these because we've got 8 billion or so people in the world. And we're very good at giving the flu vaccine. This could be a little bit more challenging in that some of these require 2 doses, and getting the patient back for the second dose, particularly if they got quite a strong reaction and their arm hurt on the first dose, could be a challenge. But the first thing is proving that they're safe and effective, and then just starting to distribute as broadly as possible, starting with those most in need, the frontline workers, the essential workers, and those sick. And again, the problem with the vaccines is the most vulnerable are those older patients who are less likely to respond to the vaccine. That's why we think these antibodies might be better. You bypass the immune response and go give them what they need.
But at the University of Pittsburgh, you're working on both, right? You have the antibody work underway as well as vaccine work, correct?
We do, and we're also one of the major trial centers. So we've administered in clinical trials the vaccines from several companies to a lot of patients, and we're getting a lot of good uptake and getting a better feel for how to get patients in and how to distribute it.
Okay, so that's the medical side of getting new therapies and new treatments out to the world. What about the business side of it, Samir? What are some of the challenges that are going to be ahead of everybody, but especially governments and businesses in the Middle East?
Yeah, so it's, our companies, as you know, are really working. And when I say our companies, it's the pharma member companies, either American companies or global companies, are working around the clock to start to find a cure and a vaccine for COVID-19. And I think the decades-long investments biopharmaceutical companies have made in new technologies over the years. I have been in the industry for many years, and I witnessed this progress, in new technologies, in research and treatments, have prepared the industry to act swiftly to respond to the COVID-19. I mean, you see the development, and Dr. Shapiro most probably is noticing this, the time it takes to develop. Plus, they are taking the risk. The risk in order to rapidly scale up production facilities to manufacture vaccine and treatment as soon as it's approved by the FDA or the European agencies. What we are working on now around the world, not only in the Middle East and Africa, is to ensure that we are working with health authorities, governments, other payers, insurance companies, to develop innovative and flexible ways to pay for medicine that focus on results and enable patients to access this. So, our companies are working individually with the countries, if they are vaccine manufacturers, or we are working as, bringing, third parties to help create some initiative to focus on the access and what, creative way of funding that can be done. So this is a work that is going on always, but now with the COVID-19, of course, it's focused on this area more than others.
Yeah, only a tiny little bit of time left, Dr. Shapiro, but I do have to ask you, because Samir talked about everybody in the world's on the case and how rapidly things are moving. In your career, have you ever seen anything like the pace at which science is moving to deal with this global challenge?
Never. Usually we talk about a decade timeline to develop a vaccine, but since this has been identified, they shared the sequence from China. That's where people started developing antibodies and working together scientifically. So I've never seen so much collaboration and hard work, and we're on a timeline, but I'm very encouraged by what I see.
Well, for those of us who are non-medical people and are relying on all of you to figure this out and ultimately address it. We can't thank you enough for all the work, and I know the sleepless nights and everything that everybody in the medical universe is doing all around the world. Dr. Stephen Shapiro from the UPMC and the University of Pittsburgh, and Samir Khalil, the Executive Director for the Middle East and Africa for the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America. Thank you both so much. We really appreciate your time today.
Thank you. Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Simon Curtis, head of the American Middle East Institute. As part of our health segment, we have today with us Dr. Dean Mukamal, who is the Chief Medical Officer at AHN Forbes Hospital, and he's also Medical Director of Premier Medical Associates Hospitalist Program. Dr. Mukamal, welcome to our first virtual conference. It's our 13th annual conference, and we're so pleased to have you with us today. Please tell us about your journey. I understand you're from Syria. We'd love to hear your connection to the Middle East. Anything you want to tell us about your work as a physician here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to join you today. It's a pleasure actually to be able to participate. A little background on myself. I am an internal medicine certified physician. I've been in the United States since 1995. I finished my medical school at the University of Aleppo in 1995, and since then I seek training here at the U.S. And I was lucky enough to be able to find a training at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center at Chili Sod Hospital locally in Pittsburgh, and was able to join the community there and be able to practice. And as things worked out, I was able to also advance my career during that period. I was able also to successfully find a lovely wife who's actually also an immigrant. She's a daughter of an immigrant physician as well from Syria. We got married in 1999, and we have 3 kids who currently are actually here in Pittsburgh area. 2 of them, one is already at the University of Pittsburgh, and the other is seniors this year. So we've been lucky enough to have roots in Pittsburgh and in the U.S. to call this a home. And the transition was quite interesting, but it was so far, I would say, it worked out well for us, thankfully.
Wonderful. What are some of the issues that you are grappling with COVID and in your practice? I mean, is there something you would like to say? And also, do you maintain a connection to the Middle East?
Obviously, like any other facility in the United States, early in the course of the pandemic, we had to do significant preparation, both from our policies and also in our prepared facility, also prepare our staff. So we went on a significant work to try to achieve all of those 3 things. So we built new facilities, we added new areas to take care of COVID patients. We prepared our staff, providing the appropriate PPE. We worked on testing and diagnostics. So it was a quite significant work, but we were lucky enough to have the support of AHN leadership and also Highmark leadership to provide us with necessary equipment, necessary supplies, and actually provide us with also elevated level of supplies and PPE. In general, people use a mask called N95. Highmark was able to provide us with a mask called N100, which did really save lives and also helped us to protect our patients better, protect ourselves better. COVID has been, thankfully in our area in Allegheny County, has been at a low level, but a significant level to unfortunately still get people sick and had to require hospitalization. Thankfully, we had not had significant number of deaths in our facilities or in the area in general, but nonetheless, we continue to take the disease seriously, continue to prepare, continue to do whatever necessary to contact, tracing, isolating patients, and quarantining when necessary. As I said, we've been thankful that the Highmark and AHN was able to provide us with the necessary tools. We'll continue, obviously, to prepare for a winter that could be challenging because of both the flu and the COVID. So we are encouraging individuals from all ages who definitely qualify for the vaccine, for the flu vaccine, to make sure they get vaccinated. and to be prepared also to continue to protect themselves from COVID. Obviously, when they made the decision to immigrate to the U.S., it was not an easy decision, obviously leaving my hometown where I lived for 25 years and to make the journey to the U.S. But nonetheless, I felt it was the most appropriate decision for me at that time. There was some difficulty, obviously, in trying to make sure you go through the immigration process. Initially, I was in a F1 student visa. I had to go through a J1, an H1, and progress into a green card and eventually citizenship through marriage with my wife, who was a natural-born citizen. Now, each step was long, but was necessary. But it helped me kind of, put things in perspective about, yeah, there's difficulty, but there was opportunities as well in the U.S. Now, during that period, I maintained contact with my family and my friends. And I still have large family, actually, presence in Syria, mainly in Damascus area, where I'm originally from. Some of them can visit, some of them can't visit, depends on their immigration status. But it's been always helpful for us to stay in touch with them, monitor their progress, learn about their challenges, and provide whatever necessary to support them, whether that's through family or through any other organization that are apolitical that allow us to support also, hospitals or organizations there. So I've been a member of a couple of organizations, National Arab American Medical Society and also Syrian American Medical Society. Mission is to really promote health and also dialogue between healthcare professionals. That was how I was able to maintain contact. Other than family contact, I was able to maintain some support through those efforts.
Well, Dr. Mukammal, thank you so much for being part of our health segment. And I'd also like to thank Highmark AHN for supporting our work today in our virtual conference that we're holding. And hopefully we can all be in person next year. Thank you again for all your good work helping our community in their health needs.
Well, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to describe what we did and also to explain my journey. So thank you for that.
It's been our pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Pittsburgh still has a great global brand name, I think. and you marry that with something like the Pittsburgh Middle East Institute, and you start to establish in people's minds, here's a community we can collaborate with, whether it's science, education, or technology. The next great global industry is going to be what I call ET, energy technology. I know that for sure in a world that's the hot, flat, and crowded world. And that industry is still wide open, and it's going to have a lot of blue-collar elements. Who's going to make those solar panels? Who's going to make those wind turbines? Who's going to make all the steel pipes that go into a geothermal, power plant? So anyone can get into that. It's going to take some vision, take some smart incentives by mayors or legislators. No reason Pittsburgh couldn't be taking the lead in that.
The extraordinary increase in public health that has taken place in the last 40 or 50 years is really dramatic. It's happened all over the world, but it's happened actually more dramatically in the Middle East because they have had some resources, but also there has been fairly good administrative bureaucracies that have been able to provide extraordinary advances in public health. Well, if you at the American Middle East Institute understand this very well, but the reality is this is a very large part of the world. It's 300 million people, which means there's 300 million consumers. It also means these are societies in which the normal economic activity has to take place. So, Egypt, people have been surprised to see that Egypt has been growing.
What AMEI is doing is focusing on trade and business, because at the end of the day, success in these countries are going to come from having an economy that's functioning and having people who have jobs. Jobs are perhaps the most important thing needed to solve some of the problems of the Middle East.
An organization like this clearly demonstrates how small the world is getting, how we here in Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania are part of a much bigger global picture.
Well, I think AMEI plays a very important role in business, education, culture, and linking the different segments of our population with like segments in other countries. It develops sinews that over time grow into very strong relationships. There often are breakthroughs in these areas that can lead to better understanding of different countries of each other. There are numerous opportunities in those countries and far beyond just the obvious ones of the energy industries in a variety of other sectors.
I didn't imagine that the conference would be at this high standard, and really I felt that Mother Nature is working against us with this storm, but it shows also that the people in Pittsburgh are able to fight and are able to survive whatever the cost. You build bridges through development, through business, through education, through health, and you get everybody to feel that the American is like the Egyptian, is like the Syrian, is like everybody. Even if the government differ, we're not differing. We will have the bridges that connect each other. And that's why the Middle East Institute has been able to put a new agenda for the people in both in the Middle East and in the United States.
He's there to do business, but in the course of doing business, he has all kinds of interpersonal relationships with people. And that speaks greater and resonates more about who we Americans are as a people with those in the Middle East than anything else we do. In my personal opinion, this is every bit as important, perhaps more important, than our military strength, which is based on our economic strength.
I want to thank the people of Pittsburgh for opening their hearts before their museum. And I have to say today, this is a first-class event.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Simon Curtis. I run the American Middle East Institute, which is a national organization headquartered in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And we're delighted to have some experts with us today on advanced manufacturing, and in this case, expertise from both the United Arab Emirates and the United States. And we're going to hear first from Mr. Badr Al-Olama, who is head of aerospace and defense for the UAE's Mubadala Investment Company. And he is also head of the organizing committee, Global Manufacturing and Industrialization Summit, which is, I think you'll hear a little bit more about that. We call it GMIS for short. We have Danny Seabright with us as well, of the head of the US UAE Business Council. It's one of the most active business councils I've ever seen. And we've worked on a couple of programs with Danny in the past, and I'm so pleased to have you as part of this conversation, Danny. We also have Ira Moskowitz, who is the new head of a national organization called the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing. And this is headquartered in Pittsburgh. And so we're going to hear from Ira as well. And now I'm going to turn it over to Bill Flanagan, who is our longtime moderator. He's an executive with the Allegheny Conference on Community Development and has his own television program called Our Region's Business. Bill, thank you so much, and please take it away.
Thank you, Simon. Happy as always to be here with you for an important discussion, not just here in Pittsburgh, but for the UAE and in fact for around the world. And we couldn't have a better panel today to really talk about and dig into what's happening in advanced manufacturing and what's really become a revolution in manufacturing worldwide. And we're hoping that our region here in Pittsburgh will play at least a significant role, a not insignificant role in helping to affect the change. But I think what I'm going to do is start around the world. As Badr, I'm going to start with you. And first off, before we get into the innovation that you see happening in the world of manufacturing, I've got to ask you about COVID-19 and the pandemic and how it's been impacting, manufacturing and innovation in your part of the world.
Well, first of all, hello to everyone from the United Arab Emirates, and I'm so pleased to be with you all and talk to you about the future of manufacturing, at least from our perspective, and how things have developed in our part of the world. But specifically about your question, Bill, I mean, COVID-19 has been disruptive in every sense that you can imagine, right? In a manufacturing world, in a world where you have interactions between people and machines, in a system where you have processes and the processes are all interdependent with each other, coming and telling people that either they have to keep distance away from each other or that they can't go to the facility because of a potential outbreak or a potential virus suspect case is very disruptive. And customers, as much as customers are dependent on the products coming out of the facility, don't want to hear excuses, right? They need these products to go out. They understand the situation we're living in. So I think from one perspective, one thing that has shown and has proven it's well worth its investment has been technology. And what COVID-19 has done, it's acted as a catalyst, right? So it has just basically pushed forward all the different investments that we've had in technologies. Whether you were stuck at home or you needed to go to the office and make sure the operations are ongoing, or you're worried about social distancing, technology had a solution for you. And I think that's exactly what has happened. And I've said this in a previous discussion as well. You had three different types of companies. Some companies that were swimming, some companies that were surfing, and some companies that were sinking. And that was all from a perspective of how much have they invested in technology. So in essence, what I would say is that with this kind of a situation, we've all assumed some form of disruption. We all had business continuity plans. Two things are things that we're going to learn from this. We all need to be digitally ready. And we all need our workforce to be digitally savvy. That's the two things that I've taken out of the COVID impact on the manufacturing sector.
It's been interesting talking to one of our CEOs here in Pittsburgh a little while ago during the worst, sort of the peak of the pandemic and the shutdown. He said, I used to do my strategic planning over 3 years. Now I do it over 3 days. And someone else said, 2030 is here. We're not thinking of the end of the decade. All of a sudden, the end of the decade has come to us because of the change that's being enforced. So in particular, what kinds of innovations are you seeing that are really changing the way manufacturing is going to operate in the UAE and around the world?
Well, that's a good question again, Bill. I start off again saying, what is the problem that we're trying to solve? Is it a cost issue? Is it a quality issue? Is it that we're trying to define a new business model? But I've seen, sort of when you talk about the fourth industrial revolution and how the fourth industrial revolution has introduced itself in our workplace. I mean, think about this. The UAE and the Middle East is very big in oil and gas. We've seen 3D printing creep its way slowly into the oil and gas market. Why? Because when you're in the field and you can't afford, a pump or a valve to break down on you, because these are barrels, millions and millions of barrels of oil, that if it gets disrupted, it's too big of a check to say it was an accident or it was a mistake, or even worse off, I didn't have a spare part available on site. So think about it this way. We are living in an age where I can 3D print a spare part when I need it. And this is how you see, the new evolution of the fourth industrial revolution creeping into our world. The other aspect, in my sector, in aerospace, when you think about it, we work in the maintenance, repair, and overhaul of aerospace engines. And that is, in simple terms, an airline gives me the engine, I repair it, and I send it back to them. Can I use artificial intelligence to predict when the next failure is going to come? And how can I make sure that I'm not just selling a service, but I'm selling the availability of the aircraft? And I can guarantee that the aircraft will not stop flying as long as I have some predictability in the maintenance program. And the last thing that I would like to mention that I've seen as a trend, and this is not in the UAE but elsewhere, is that we're seeing modular production lines. And this is again is a different sort of trend that's coming in. Before, it was all about efficiency. It was all about commonality. It was all about one product going through one production line. And today, we're saying that we cannot continue to be, expensive. We need to have flexibility. We need to introduce flexibility on the production line. And can we produce different products on one production line? So you're seeing these trends, and more companies are welcoming it, as opposed to going to the old model of saying, I need to be super efficient, but then when COVID-19 comes in, everything breaks down.
Do you see, as this technology is adopted more universally, it's going to change business models as well? The real evolution or revolution happening there?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that to tackle climate change, as an example, which is becoming the biggest problem of our century, we have to go back to technology. We have to depend on digital technology solutions. And probably somewhere there, we're going to get a disruptive, but a profound impact to be able to tackle climate change. Whatever we've done today has been, in my opinion, very minimal efforts, good efforts, minimal efforts, but we need a bigger sort of transformational change to be able to tackle climate change. So my bet is that the next big thing that is going to tackle climate change will be based on a digital technology.
So Danny Seymour, let me turn to you a little bit. I'm working for the U.S. UAE Business Council, which of course works to build commercial ties and growing business opportunities between the two countries. What are some examples that you see right now, the collaboration in advanced manufacturing, and what do you see as priority areas going forward?
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Simon, Curtis, and AMEI for allowing us to be on today. I have to say to Badr, though, first, Badr, I haven't yet sunk. My swimming is pretty decent. I've taken a lot of swimming lessons as a young boy, and I've perfected them over the years. But every time I've tried to surf in Hawaii and a couple other places, I've fallen off the board. So is there hope for me at this point to still learn how to surf, Badr?
You're our champion, Danny. You're the best out there. So I'm sure you'll get a hang of it.
All right, Badr. Thank you. Look, Bill, to answer your question, U.S. and UAE cooperation in the manufacturing sector is extensive, it's growing, it forms a central pillar of the bilateral relationship overall. And cooperation is taking many forms, with investment moving in both directions. and supply relationships providing mutually beneficial outcomes. Just as a few examples, General Electric signed an MOU with Mubadala, Abu Dhabi's strategic investment arm, and the Dubai Future Foundation, forming the basis for GE Additive to build a micro factory in Dubai. Strata, an aircraft parts company that belongs to Abu Dhabi Sovereign Wealth Fund, again, Mubadala, has partnered with our member Honeywell to respond to COVID-19. Just in the last few months, the manufacturing line at Strata's Al Ain plant shifted from producing aero parts, I think as Badr was mentioning, to producing N95 masks to protect medical workers. The hosting, of GMIS in 2021 in Pittsburgh, an American industrial powerhouse, which successfully managed transition towards high-tech and advanced manufacturing, really bodes well for future US-UAE collaboration in advanced manufacturing. And Bill and Simon, as I've discussed with you before, what I think one of the things Pittsburgh brings to the table is the trifecta of research and development with the universities, investment from the companies, and a government, a local government and a state government that's pushing and promoting investment in these areas. Key U.S. companies continue to focus on introducing advanced robotics, 3D printing, machine learning, and AI to the advanced manufacturing processes across many, many verticals. These continue to be the key areas for future U.S.-UAE partnership.
You know, you mentioned the cooperation between Strata and Honeywell. How else has the pandemic changed manufacturing in the UAE?
Well, in June, the UAE launched this 3D printing strategic alliance, which allows for better coordination between government and 3D printing businesses in the case of crises. This strategy aims to mitigate supply chain strains, especially relevant today in the context of the pandemic, which has placed a strain on global medical supply chains. The UAE is also using AI to manage supply chain disruptions. Another important development is the appointment of Dr. Sultan Al Jaber as Ministry of Industry. And I would just say that what the UAE has done with its airlines, Emirates and Etihad, to work on the pandemic response has been nothing short of remarkable as well.
You talk about this newly created position of a Minister of Industry and Advanced Technology. What does that say about the UAE's focus on advanced manufacturing?
Well, it speaks to commitment. And look, I know Dr. Sultan very, very well. And if the Crown Prince puts Dr. Sultan on the case, there's going to be change and there's going to be action moving forward. As the UAE looks to recover from the pandemic, the creation of this ministry demonstrates the emphasis that the UAE is placing on harnessing the power of new technologies, as Badr mentioned, in the digital space to transform its economy. Both the name of the ministry and the appointment of one of Abu Dhabi's most visionary businessmen to head the new ministry reflect the importance that the UAE is placing at the national level on revolutionizing industry through the adoption of these groundbreaking technologies. And to Badr's point, and to your point, Bill, we in many ways we're already, as you said, we're already at 2030, and the UAE is already looking beyond that. And what can they do? In the midst of the pandemic, the ministry has already had an impact and has played a critical role in enhancing the production capacity in the UAE in medical and personal protective equipment. Key to the UAE's overall objective in this area are driving efficiencies and spurring innovation. With the vision, commitment, and the resource that the UAE brings to the table, the opportunities are boundless. And I want to reiterate here, the cooperation with American firms, with American research and development institutions is very, very ripe for future collaboration.
Great perspective, Danny. Thank you so much. Ira Moskowitz, actually, welcome to Pittsburgh. You're barely here yet, right? You just joined the Advanced Robotics and Manufacturing Institute.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've been here just a couple of weeks. It's been an honor to be here in Pittsburgh and to really enjoy the area for at least for the 2 weeks we've been here. And someday we'll actually get around to unpacking our boxes.
Yeah, I can't imagine in the middle of what we're all going through to try to relocate from Massachusetts to Pennsylvania, but welcome. It's wonderful to have you here. From your perspective, we've heard a lot about the bet that the UAE is placing on advanced manufacturing and really transforming transforming the industry. Why is it such a big deal? Why is it so important right now?
Sure. So the reason why manufacturing in general, let alone advanced manufacturing, is so important is that innovation and manufacturing, in my experience, are inextricably intertwined. So let me explain. We certainly have here in the Pittsburgh area, absolutely, and across the nation, many brilliant scientists and engineers. We invent some of the world's most impactful products. However, those of us that have spent our professional lives in manufacturing, as I have, know that in many cases, the knowledge that we gain by making the products ourselves leads us to the next generation of innovations, because we learn so much about the products when we make them ourselves. So we can't just invent things and then not manufacture them in general, or we are at the risk in the end of losing our innovation leadership and innovation prowess.
So, and where do robotics fit into all of this, into this new world of advanced manufacturing?
Yeah, sure. So it's very important, automation and autonomy and robotics. Let me answer that by distinguishing between what I'll call traditional manufacturing and advanced manufacturing. So in a traditional manufacturing plant, and for those of us that are manufacturers, you kind of know it when you see it, but if you walk in, you see a lot of manual operations. You'll see a lot of paper around, maybe some spreadsheets. The operators that are working on tools are manually loading them, and they're often trained on the tools by more experienced operators who know how to use them. And we have many traditional manufacturers, and they're making essential products. But the most innovative, the most impactful, really the most efficient and most important manufacturing is really what we're going to call advanced manufacturing. Both Danny and Badir have very eloquently talked about some of the attributes, sometimes called Industry 4.0, sometimes Factory of the Future. But the vision of the Factory of the Future is people and robots working together to produce the world's most innovative competitive products, and in that way meeting the world's most important challenges, some of which Badir has talked about. And if you walk into that Factory of the Future, the most distinguishing attribute that you will see is automation and robotics and artificial intelligence and those types of digital technologies. And with respect to worker training, what you'll see is comprehensive worker training in robotics and automation and analytics. So it's the automation of the entire value chain going backward and forward that actually enables us to make some of the products that can't be made otherwise. You know, my whole background is in semiconductor manufacturing. Everything you touch today with a power switch has a chip in it, everything. It is impossible to make these types of chips with millions of devices integrated into a tiny spot without automation. So the future of the challenges that Badir has talked about, the types of products that will be revolutionary in the future, all require what we call advanced manufacturing, and automation and robotics and artificial intelligence are really the key attributes in every type of advanced manufacturing process of the future.
Badir and Danny both talked about the UAE's bet on advanced manufacturing. The ARM Institute here in Pittsburgh in many ways represents America's bet on robotics and advanced manufacturing. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the ARM Institute is and what you hope to accomplish there?
Sure, absolutely. So the Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing Institute, or the ARM Institute, is, as you said, it's really the nation's leading collaborative in both robotics and in automation in general, autonomy, artificial intelligence, and, by the way, in workforce innovation, because every one of the manufacturing institutes, and there are 14 across the country, every of them has a dual focus and dual programs, one on technology, but very intelligently, the other part is workforce education in those technologies. Otherwise, how do we actually deploy those technologies if we don't educate our workforce? So we're structured as a public-private partnership, and our mission is to accelerate the adoption of robotics technologies that, as I've talked about, are the foundation of every advanced manufacturing activity today and into the future. And we, like the other institutes in the country, we leverage a very unique and robust and diverse ecosystem of over 270 partners across industry, academia, nonprofits, and government, headquartered here in Pittsburgh. And this is really the sort of the national brain trust of automation with our 270 plus members. And what we do is we make robotics and autonomy and artificial intelligence more accessible to U.S. manufacturers, large and small, by sponsoring lots of projects, initiatives to drive forward in the key technology gaps in these areas. But in parallel to that, we have strong programs to train and empower the manufacturing workforce. And in general, the mission is to strengthen our economy, global competitiveness, and in the end, make sure we secure and elevate the nation's security. And in this world of the pandemic, make sure that we're supporting all of those supply chains that had to suddenly pivot and get into gear and produce all of these critical products and services in order to make sure that the world is more resilient. And in the end, that has become a new and very important part of the mission of the ARM Institute.
Does robotics, or will robotics, make pivoting more possible as we confront similar challenges in the future?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's a big focus of what we have looked at so far over the last 6 months, sponsoring actually millions of dollars of projects on using autonomous systems and on using robotics to advance the rate at which we can pivot for a pandemic or anything in the future. And part of that is creating automated, flexible systems that can pivot quickly to make different products depending on the need. And part of that is capacity. If you've suddenly got to go from virtually 0 to 100% in a short space of time, it is very hard to bring in that many workers suddenly and train people, particularly in a strong economy. So you need that for the ability to have flexible capacity to address something like a pandemic if it hits, and then you can turn that off again when it's not needed.
But Danny mentioned the GMIS summit that you're bringing to Pittsburgh in 2021. Are these the kinds of topics you hope that participants will be able to dig into when they're participating in the conference?
Yeah, I mean, to just bring the context back to what GMIS is. GMIS was set up as a sort of a platform where the public sector, private sector, and civil society could shape the future of manufacturing. There was a lot of fear-mongering going on with respect to the fourth industrial revolution. It's going to cause a loss of jobs. It's going to, impact livelihoods and everything. I mean, at a time like COVID, you're seeing the exact opposite, right? Jobs are actually sustained because you have some form of technology. I can talk to you and I can talk to someone else. We can communicate with each other. So in the context of that, we believe that GMIS is the right platform. It is a must sort of go-to event where you could sit down and talk about the future of manufacturing. But more importantly, our ambition is not to keep it as a talk shop. Our ambition at every single GMIS that we've had, from 2017 to 2019 to the one we had a few months back, which we did virtually, we have to launch a legacy initiative. We have to leave a legacy for the world. And that means we bring in the public sector and the private sector and civil society to work on something that sustains beyond the event that happened in Abu Dhabi or in Russia or virtually, which was supposed to happen in Germany. And the last one that we did, we announced the Green Chain Initiative. And the Green Chain Initiative was about crowdsourcing renewable energy projects in places that were rich with renewable energy to actually power their industry. But also, if they have some excess energy left, they could mine some cryptos and pass those cryptos to another part of the world that was less renewable energy friendly to make it renewable energy friendly. I mean, it's these kind of ideas that I think once you have the government on board, you have some phenomenal companies that take ESG very seriously. A company like Mubadala, the one that I'm affiliated with, takes ESG very seriously. And putting these two together, we can make great things happen for the world. And this is why I'm very passionate about GMIS, and I'm very excited about the fact that GMIS is coming to Pittsburgh. Listen to all the positive things. I've been to Pittsburgh. I've heard you talk about Pittsburgh. I've met the great people of Pittsburgh, including the mayor, and I see something that is very different from the rest of the U.S. So this is why we believe that for GMIS to come to the U.S., the right destination for it, the right venue, is Pittsburgh.
Danny, only a few seconds left, so I'll give you the last word. A lot of potential to build this relationship between the United States and the UAE economically?
Well, thanks, Bill. Absolutely. We right now we're at over $25 billion or close to $25 billion in our two-way bilateral trade. And even with the pandemic, even with some other things going on in the world, low oil prices, for example, that trade is just continuing, and the UAE just continues to be a major hub between East and West and North and South for the region. For the future, the UAE wants to focus focus on research and development and creating IP at home and bringing a cadre, if you will, a generation of young Arabs from across the Middle East region, and now increasingly also partnership with Israel, forward for opportunity in these verticals and these sectors to create and develop for the future. And I just got to say that with their partnership with American firms and the opportunity that brings to the table, I see a lot of amazing cooperation and collaboration going forward that's going to be happening on the ground in the UAE with partners like folks like you in Pittsburgh.
All right. Well, a fascinating topic, and we hope to be able to continue the conversation next year during GMS in Pittsburgh. Thank you all so much. Simon?
Thank you, guys. That was a fantastic conversation. It's exciting to hear you speak about all the promise that's going on and the collaboration between our countries. And Badr, thanks for tuning in from the UAE. This was great. And Ira, welcome again to Pittsburgh. And Danny, you're great. Continue your great work in building these ties. Bill, as always, thank you again. You always hit it out of the park for us. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the United States or in the Middle East or around the world. Welcome to the American Middle East Institute's 13th annual conference, our first virtual conference. We're so delighted to have you be with us and to experience or learn about some of the things that are going on in our city of Pittsburgh, where we are headquartered. We are a city that I would say is a microcosm of so many of the areas of expertise that exist around the United States. We have expertise in healthcare. We have robotics and AI. We have a number of universities, some of them premier universities that are working on AI and robotics and advanced manufacturing, finance, energy. So we have a lot going on. We're so pleased this morning to have Mark Thomas with us, who runs the Pittsburgh Regional Alliance. And Mark, tell us about what you're doing and how you're trying to attract investment here in robotics and AI.
First, thanks for having me. This is my first time speaking at the event, so I'm excited to be here. I will say Pittsburgh has so many assets when you look at our universities, our culture, our history, and robotics and AI are at the core of what makes us really a great innovation hub. And so what we're focused on at the PRA is really maximizing that narrative so people really understand the types of companies we're building, the types of innovation that we're exploring, and the types of horizons, whether you're in space technologies or life sciences that are integrating both robotics and AI into their work, that is really driving our region forward.
And what do you think has sort of made Pittsburgh this center of robotics, AI, machine learning? Why is there this critical mass of sort of talent that has come together here?
If anything, there are only a few hubs that really are specialized in the deep technology areas. And we just happen to be one of those. And that comes from just investments that our universities and our research institutions have made over time. And so it positions us well for the next decade because we know those will be areas that companies will be investing in significantly. The venture capitalists will really be looking for great technologies and great entrepreneurs to fund. And so a lot of the activity you see is really the starting point for a much greater future for us.
Well, it's a very exciting time. I must say, Pittsburgh is starting to attract especially some important sovereign wealth funds in the Middle East. We're going to actually be featuring some of these individuals who run some of these sovereign wealth funds at this event, our virtual event. And I think what has really attracted them is what's going on here and how many leading edge processes, from machine learning in healthcare to driverless vehicle research that's going on here. And so it's very exciting. I think they're going to be holding a grand conference here next year in 2021.
No, they are. And I think what we want to see obviously as a conference be successful. And I think what people who visit the city over the next year will really get a chance to understand is all the areas of AI, robotics, and as I mentioned, just kind of deep technologies that are attracting a lot of investment. And they're somewhat transformative products. They change kind of how we think about driving. They change how we think about our healthcare and health delivery. And they definitely automate and optimize so many different manufacturing and distribution type of businesses. And so all of that will really be at the forefront of innovation, and Pittsburgh will be a leading edge of that.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for being part of our event and helping us build our friendships and attract the attention of some important folks who want to invest in our region. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for watching today's American Middle East Institute 2020 Virtual Business Conference. Feel free to share today's content, and for more information about supporting the American Middle East Institute, visit americanmei.org.